All right, so I was having a discussion with someone online, and it was about, well, a group online, I should say, and the discussion was about if Masters of the Universe had a video game, what kind of game would you like it to be? And I had said that SoulCalibur VI is kind of the secret best Masters of the Universe game because of the character creator, and it was like, well, show off what you've done with it so we can see. So that's what I'm doing here. So you have 50 character slots to create, and I've got 4 remaining. I used to have a Lion-O, Mum-Ra, and Zelda characters. I deleted them to make room. Because every now and again I just go in here and tool around and see what I can come up with. But yeah, so I'm going to go through the characters here and show them out. So here is He-Man, of course, and this is where you can kind of just get a look at it in this mode. So in some ways you got to get creative with the parts that they give you. You don't have absolutely everything to make perfect renditions of these characters, but once they're in battle and they're moving around and they're doing their thing, it's pretty good. You don't notice the differences or the things that are missing too much. Like, for example, his boots are kind of wrong, but I think again, you don't notice that there's bones or teeth or fangs or whatever on them when you're actually in there playing. It just looks like he's got his kind of burgundy furry boots on. Alright, so we'll back out of He-Man. And I then have Battle Armor He-Man. So in the last version of He-Man, I modded in the cross on his chest. That's not in the game. But in this case, to make the H insignia on his chest, I just use there's stickers in the game, and some of them are just basic numbers, and that's just the number 1 manipulated a few times to resemble the battle armor symbol. And so as Battle Armor He-Man, this looks pretty darn faithful, I believe. He's a little more gussied up than the real Battle Armor He-Man, in that his gear is different, but yeah, I think this works pretty well. The cool thing about this character viewer is that you can change the time of day, and then you can also SoulCalibur has a feature where you can break people's armor off, and you can control, like, if you don't like that feature, you can turn it off. Or say you can only break, the midsection, so you can break his armor, but not, his boots, because that's kind of weird, or his belt. So back out of battle armor and go into, I think Prince Adam is next. So SoulCalibur is cool and frustrating at the same time, because there's a lot of fighting styles to choose. So if you're not familiar, you can't just pick every move your guy has. You choose from the pre-made characters' move sets. And so the only so I used a feminine fighting style for Prince Adam. And again, it's one of those things where in the heat of battle you don't notice it too well, except for certain animations. But I think it works for Prince Adam, because he's trying to not be noticed as the most powerful hero in the universe, right? So I think this one really works out pretty well for him. And you can see texture his costume. So that's a feature of SoulCalibur. Most of these things are pretty basic looking, but there's textures you can apply and scale them and color them and that sort of thing, and it works pretty well for what you're trying to accomplish. And I've got a dog stealing something, so I have to pause this recording for a moment. Alright, where was I? Talking about Prince Adam. Like, that works for Prince Adam, right? Some of the poses are cool, some of them, they just work for the character. And that's kind of a frustrating thing, because some of them, you have some movesets that are pretty neutral, and you have some that are overtly for a specific type of character, and so you got to kind of be judicious in how you use them, or pretty creative, and we'll see what I've done with some as we go in here. So this is my Skeletor. So another interesting thing about this is that there is a skull face, but to make a skull face you have to choose a whole skeleton body type. And so you have to then have just a skeleton wearing clothes. And so in this case, I have disabled the armor breaking except for blowing off his hood. But it also removes his eyeballs if you look closely there. Let's get tight in there. So I gave him red eyeballs, but when you bust his hood, they're gone because they're part of the head equipment. But that's all right. Break out of here and kind of go through some of the stock poses. So, I mean, obviously a very stylized Skeletor. But I think I got his main notes there, the kind of cyan blue main body in his clothes and the purple. So the fighting style he uses, he conjures weapons out of midair, which I think is perfect for Skeletor. And then I've got body armor, battle armor Skeletor, except, this isn't really battle armory at all. It's just I wanted to give him two looks, much like He-Man. And so here he is. Looking pretty fly, Skeletor. Alright. If I keep this pace, we're going to be here forever. So Skeletor doesn't have a Prince Adam analog, but he does have Keldor, his alter ego, before he was turned into a crazy Skull Man. And so I kind of gave him, he's like a thief prince, right? He's exiled from the castle, from the kingdom, and so I gave him sort of a piratey look without being overtly piratey. And Geralt from The Witcher is a guest fighter here, and so Keldor in the 2002 series, he fights with twin swords, even though they're a little different from this, but I thought it was, probably the best thing you can do. And also this fighting style has magic, you can throw fireballs. And so that's another interesting thing about SoulCalibur, in that it doesn't really have a guy with sword in a European style, fighting moveset. It's got, He-Man had a samurai moves, again, one of those things where you don't really notice in the heat of battle. And then Geralt here is probably the closest thing to just guy holding sword with one hand fighting style. Alright, She-Ra. So, again, one of those things where you got to get a little creative with the parts that are available, but I think this is pretty successful. She's got a Valkyrie thing going on here. That long tail, I couldn't get a cape looking good on She-Ra, so I used this belt, which has this long tail, and it also has kind of a Valkyrie motif. And you see that her costume is like clipping through her dress there, but, in certain poses it doesn't happen. And again, fighting in battle, everything is very fast-paced. You don't notice it happening. So there's She-Ra, and then I made a battle armor She-Ra, even though no such thing exists. And so here she's got a helmet. I thought that a battle armor She-Ra would probably have a helmet, and this battle armor here is probably closer to the actual She-Ra costume than the one I made. And I gave her the big ass sword, just like how He-Man has the giant sword in his battle armor style. And so yeah, I think she looks pretty cool. And so I, part of the reason why they do the breaking of battle armor thing in SoulCalibur is for teenage boy titillation, I would imagine. But I disable it in a lot of places. But when there's a battle armor type of thing happening, it kind of makes sense. And now she's down to basically her normal costume if you break her battle armor. I kind of find that stuff kind of cringy, to be honest. But when you can be smart about it and not, cheesy about it, I think it works. And here's Adora. She has, much like Adam, she's not really wearing any armor to break. And going into the viewing screen here. So this was another mod that I found, this sword here. So there's a character in SoulCalibur named Setsuka, and she has an umbrella, but the umbrella hides a sword in the handle. So I got a mod that replaces the umbrella with just a sword hilt. And so I think that ends up looking pretty cool for this character. Yeah. All right, now to Tila. Tila's the last character, I think, where I made 3 variations. So Tila is using a fighting style that uses a long staff because that's what she's known for. She's got the snake staff. Fortunately, couldn't find a good replacement for that, nor are there any mods for that sort of thing. I couldn't figure out how to give her the high collar that her costume is known for, so she's got this little furry mini cape. But overall, I think that she's pretty readable as Tila. I like the 2002 style where she's got a long ponytail. All right. And then this is Battle Armor Tila. So, each aspect here, the 2 Tilas, if you could take parts of each costume, you probably have a more perfect Tila. But I think this is pretty good. And this is as white as this costume can get. So I do wish that it could be bright white, like Tila's costume usually is. But this is what you can do in SoulCalibur. And then, I didn't make 3. I just went on to the Sorceress, which kind of counts. The Sorceress is her mom, but it's also her fate to be the Sorceress. And so the Sorceress has a cape with these colors instead of actual wings. But again, this is what SoulCalibur has. You can't make a cape look like wings, look like it has feathers. And this fighting style, the way she kind of bounces around, really kind of gives a lot of motion to it and sells the bird motif by having the feathers move around. This Chinese Jan fighting style, I think you would call it. Some of these poses you can do in the viewer are really dynamic, whereas some of the other ones, they just stand there with the sword. All right, Merman. I talked about a pirate earlier. I leaned into pirate a little bit with Merman by giving him this pirate hat, which I think is pretty rad. I don't know about you. So he's got, I believe, the same fighting style as Tila does. Oh no, there's a more I don't know, two characters with the same spear or staff fighting style. I hope that mute feature works, otherwise I just sneezed right into the microphone. Okay, here's Ram Man. What can you say about Ram Man? So to mod, I used a mod again here, and I modded his weapon to be invisible. Because this character, he uses some like headbutts and charging moves, but I didn't want him to be hefting around the giant battle axe. So sometimes his animations look a little silly, but there are other times where he's just doing his thing. Like the character does like a lot of throws and a lot of slams and that sort of thing. So it works out. This guy uses the equipment break, so you can. So he just looks like a normal guy, kind of a baby-faced guy. I don't think I have his pants break when you fight him, but you can't really make super ugly-looking guys, and I think Ram Man's a guy who would benefit from being able to make him pretty gnarly looking. Trapjaw, I gotta really be creative to do Trapjaw. So there is some asymmetrical gauntlets, even though it's on the wrong hand. And there are like just some stock parts you can put anywhere on a person's body, and so I basically have this this cog wheel, an egg. It's not really an egg; it's the moon, but it looks like an egg here. And then this the actual hook piece is meant to be like a Spartan helmet. They kind of have that mohawk thing or crest on their helmet. But in battle, looks great, and again I modded out his weapon. He uses a nunchuck style, and so nunchucks are pretty close quarters type of weapon, so it's not super noticeable that he should have a weapon, but he doesn't, except when he does some of his poses, and that's his fighting stance, which is a little dynamic for Trapjaw, I think. But, you know, yeah, he's kicking up his nunchucks and doing his little show off with it, but, oh, I forgot to show off his armor break. It's not spectacular. Triclops. So I kind of leaned into a Chinese warrior with Triclops here, with the wicker hat, and the enamel armor here, and well, I guess he's got, you know, kind of Chinese Japanese. You know, this is a samurai pants type of thing. I forgot what it's called in the game. And so he uses the same fighting style that my plain He-Man uses, I think, or the battle armor He-Man. Now I don't remember. But he's meant to be, you know, a master swordsman, and he's got that same sword that Toei has with the big knuckle guard. So I thought that was a little bit of serendipity that was there. And then to do his 3 eyes, I just gave him a blindfold and put 3 eyeballs, sort of more on the front because it doesn't cover his ears, and you would never see it if it was around back. So a little bit of creative license there for old Triclops. Here it comes, Man-at-Arms. So he uses a fencing style, which I thought made pretty good sense. So there isn't a big single pauldron, but there is this cloth one. It's on the correct side, and I think it looks pretty good, but you can't make it look metal. You can kind of give it a bit of a sheen with texturing, which I tried to do here. You know, with this, I just thought that this pattern, this texture looked okay on it. Not really meant to replicate what we had here. And then he's got this turquoise tank on his chest, and some of the figures have this. So this is actually a pistol. You can zoom in on it, which, you know, you can kind of see him probably do, right? He can reach up with his left hand and grip that pistol. Could you? I don't know if you could actually, if that'd be the right direction for a grip, but I think it looks okay. And then it looks pretty cool when you break off his armor. Looks kind of sinister, you know. Every older, you know, it's not to get too generalization here, but you know, a Japanese game usually will lean into their heroes being very young and pretty, and anybody older is kind of evil looking. This is sort of a trope, but that's what we got with Man-at-Arms. And here comes Stratos. So I gave him goggles. I think that looks pretty cool. I think it was funny. I made myself laugh with that because, you know, Stratos is a pretty lame character in my estimation. And what can you do? You got to lean into it, right? So he's got this kind of ridiculous-looking Spartan helmet and goggles. And then you can't do a furry guy, so you have to do like this scarred up. But when you're, you know, in the heat of, I say that all the time, but it's true. When you're playing the game is very fast-paced, so you don't really notice that things are a little wrong. And I think I used a mod to be able to use 4 of these feather things. Usually you can only do 3 of these kind of items that you can place on a character's body. The mod tool is called SoulCalibur, like vodka mixed with caliber, SoulCalibur. I should have mentioned that much earlier. Nobody's going to listen to this far. Here we have Jitsu. He's got a samurai style. So there is a body type, or an underwear option. And underwear includes literally underwear, but it also is like full body suits. That's why you see he's kind of got some straps around him. But it also includes a metal hand. So I colored it gold, and it works for Jitsu, even though he doesn't really do any hand-to-hand combat. It looks pretty great. Have some sake to get ready for battle. Yeah, I really like Jitsu as a character. I think he's pretty awesome. I think him and Triclops are very interesting characters to me because, you know, most of the people who choose to hang out with Skeletor are monsters or creatures or mutants or, you know, somehow disfigured and rebuilt. Jitsu and Triclops are just dudes. And they're like, yeah, Skeletor, that's the way I want to go with my life, which I think is interesting. All right, so this was what, 20 of the characters. So I'll pause the video here because this is long, over 20 minutes now, and I'll pick up with. Okay, here we are picking up where we left off, and we have Beast Man. Beast Man I made just a touch more civilized, not much, because there isn't something that replicates his giant pelt that he wears. So he's got this tribal looking thing. I think that works pretty well, even though it's a little too red. But I was able to sort of replicate that medallion he wears, and his spiked shoulder pads, and his trunks are actually ripped up jeans, cut-offs like Tobias Funke's Never Nudes. But you play with what the game gives you. Beastman is pretty fun. King Randor. This chest plate here is base in the game, and I think it just looked very, very regal. Do you see a face in it? Now you cannot unsee it. But it is sort of reminiscent to what he has as a figure. He's got his long cape, just has more of a realistic bend to the existing, or the actual figure character. And I chose to do this at a time where I'm sneezing my head off. Sorry for that dead air there. I got no production value. I don't want to put any effort into editing. Evil Lynn is one of my favorite characters. I didn't try to go too teenage scene girl with Evil Lynn here, but if it works, it works. And so she uses Tira's ring blade, and this fighting style is interesting because it has a jolly and a gloomy system where you do certain moves and it alters the character's sort of personality, and she starts to look like this and uses more sadistic looking attacks when she's in a gloomy state. When she's in this state, she sort of fights fair. It's an interesting mechanic, but SoulCalibur battles are so fast that it really never comes into play. In an interesting way. I mean, you can activate it and use the moves as a tool, but if you're trying to sort of, I don't know, tell a story with a fight, that's a silly way to put it, but you know what I mean, I think. He just looked pretty awesome. And then I made 2 Evil Lyns because I just like the character, and in this case, this is another situation where I modded out her weapon, which is a fencing style, but there's a book in the character creator that you can just give to a character to place wherever on their body, and so she ends up looking like she's casting magic. None of that's really going to come through in these stock poses, I don't think. No. Queen Marlena. I guess I had the idea to do Marlena well after I did Randor, hence why they're not together. Marlena wears a long green dress in the animation, so she's got this coat, so she looks more like, I don't know what she looks like, if this is like something nobility would wear, but she's got that same sword and shield fighting style that Prince Adam has, actually. She has the same pose twice in her rotation. Web store doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So these, the classics figure has these spider legs that come out of his backpack, and in this case I used, if it's not entirely obvious, like elk antlers on him to replicate that idea. And the goggles on him, so Web Store is, they don't say this because it's a kid's property, right? But Webstor is an assassin, if you really think about it. Lurks in the darkness, infiltrates places with his webs, and this is the kind of thing that happens. I should have attached it to his neck instead of his head, or his neck instead of his back, because then the part would travel with his movements better. And I guess I modded out his weapons. He uses 2 knives as his thing, but I guess I wanted to make him a hand-to-hand specialist, more like a ninja, I guess. I don't know, I think he would look fine with the weapons. I don't remember why I chose to do that. Alright, here's one where I went really far afield. So here's Cyclone. Cyclone is a hero character, and his toy has this feature where his front half, his top half, swivels, so he can create cyclones. And so this fighting style here uses another mod. He uses Yoshimitsu's fighting style, and Yoshimitsu always has a flag on his back, so I found a mod that removes the flag. So, his colors are there. They're just done differently than the figure is, and instead of him being more cosmic looking, he looks more like a samurai. Oops, wrong button there. And then his chest. He's got this radar dish on his chest. The toy does. Here I made it a kind of a globe of space. It makes sense, trust me. And then also I use this because this character has spinning as part of his moveset. But he's also very silly and does things like this. Yeah. You take the good with the bad, right? Mechanic. Mechanic is a character that everybody loves to make fun of. Sort of a meme character among Masters of the Universe nerds. I must have used I used the nunchucks fighting style for him too. Mechanic is, and again, they don't say this when they use his character in any of the entertainment, but you think about his power. He stretches his neck as a telescope to see things. So he's a spy or a scout, and so I wanted to make him sort of a regal-looking costume. So he kind of like looks like he has a role in the king's court as like his chief spy. And they don't have a piece of armor that has a thing protruding upward to cover his nose, so I used this Roman helmet here to cover his nose. And I think if you smash, you just smash it off. And I like that emblem. I think I added that emblem to his helmet. Like Man-at-Arms had a similar emblem on his helmet, but that was there on the piece in the game, the model for the helmet. But in this case, like it's also in the game as a sticker, so to kind of bring continuity to the King's Guard and the King's special forces or whatever it would be. All right, we've got Provis. Provis is a character who only appears in flashback in one episode of the 2002 animated series, but he looked really cool and made an impression in a lot of fans, and I really like him. I like his design. He's sort of an evil genie, and some of the more genie-like aspects couldn't really sell here, like the long pointed beard and stuff like that. But I gave him the same fighting style and poses of Skeletor, and I guess he kind of looks similar too with that belt piece. I think I used that same one on Skeletor, so maybe I should revisit this. But I just think he is a cool-looking, kind of stock, kind of rote, but sometimes that fits. Sort of demon-looking bad guy. Fisto, the guy whose name we all love to make fun of, and rightfully so. It is a stupid name. Kind of gave him an East meets West look. This armor is a Chinese armor, and he uses a samurai fighting style, but using a sword that looks like a Western sword. I end up using this fighting style probably too much, because it is the closest thing to just guy with sword fighting style. And then much like Jitsu, he uses a body type that has this metal hand on it. So he's got his fist. And this fighting style does have a punch if you're in close quarters, so I just suppose it makes sense. Fisto's real name is Malcolm, so sometimes I call him that when I create characters and stuff, but I went back and made it Fisto because you gotta lean into the goofiness. Here's Zodak. Nobody's favorite character, but a character that is fun to explore and think about. He's meant to be a neutral character, but I made 3 Zodaks. One to be good, one to be neutral, and one to be evil. This is good Zodak. Even though he looks pretty pretty menacing here and pretty arrogant with his twin swords. Here is neutral Zodak. Oh no, this is evil Zodak. Zodak with a Q. So Zodak, I did Zodak with a C for good, Zodak with a K for neutral, and Zodak with a Q for bad. Modded out his weapon. He uses the Voldo style, which is very unorthodox and very strange, and also sort of perverse in some ways. That's kind of a cool pose, though. Let's see if we can get him to do one of his weirder poses. Like, he does stuff like this. Breakdancing is a fighting style, but also with pelvic thrusting. He's an S&M weirdo. Which, if that's your thing, you know, no hate on that. And then Zodak with a K here. So he's got a spear fighting style, but I modded it out just so I wanted to have, you know, some variety, even if I had to fake it, like some hand-to-hand stuff. And then also I did a armor break because he's got these bright blue tattoos that glow when he's using his power, and that's how I kind of replicated it here. Clamp Champ. I like this character, even though he has really no characterization in any of the entertainment. But I kind of thought, well, what if Clamp Champ was an actual champ? And there is a title belt in the options or in the character creation objects. So my thought here was Clamp Champ was an arena fighter, and he became the champion, and the king recruited him, saying, "Hey, I need a strong fighter to lead my troops." And so he's got this eagle motif that I put on Mechanic and Man-at-Arms to kind of denote the king's most trusted men. And it also exists on his championship belt that he wears into battle, because why wouldn't you? I think more people should wear fancy gold belts. I think it's a fantastic fashion statement. Very bold. And here we are with Mr. Clamp Champ. He has there's no clamp weapon, but there are, you know, twin swords that fly around, and that's the same thing, right? It's exactly the same. It's fine. It's fine. Bow. Bow is She-Ra's special friend, and we all know what that means. So, you know, Bow, he's a dude who fights with a bow, and there's a twin sword in the game that I think I found a mod for that makes it look like a bow. And he has a heart emblem on his chest, but because of the detail of the chest, you really can't tell it's a heart. So replicated that on his what is that called? I don't know. A fold? SoulCalibur adds all these fun names for the armor, and I don't know if those are the actual historical names. So if I'm, like, you know, in an academic context talking about medieval weaponry and armor, and I cite a name I learned from, because that's a situation everybody's in at least once in their lives, right? I'm sure it is. So the Faceless One, he is the former king of the city-state of Zalesia, and he angered the gods in some such way, probably by helping Evelyn, if I remember correctly, steal the Ram Stone for Skeletor, a powerful artifact. And his curse is now he is immortal, and he must sort of walk the ruins of Zalesia as a wraith. with no face. So he's kind of got this this Rorschach type hood on, and you can't extend a texture or a sticker to the back of a head. I don't know why. So he's got this hard line here, but you don't notice it unless you're on a close-up pose, which, you know, the game does when you win a battle and it does something like this, and you say, hey, why does that look so weird? Because SoulCalibur has odd limitations. Well, what am I doing here? Seahawk is She-Ra's other special friend. You know, get it, girl. So Seahawk is a pirate, and I made him look fairly piratey. You know, I woulda, coulda, shoulda gave him a pirate hat, but I already gave it to Merman, and that makes me laugh too much to want to remove it and give it to him. And I try not to reuse stuff too much. Obviously, you know, there's not, you know, much you can do about that sometimes. But Seahawk's a pretty normal looking guy, and so it was hard to make him look really neat. I guess his defining thing as a character, as something toyetic, is that he's got a lightsaber as a pirate. So I colored the sword to look as such. Ninjor. You know, once a toy line goes down to dinosaurs and ninjas, you know, they've lost all their ideas and they're just trying and flailing to find something that's going to work and draw in some kids. And so that's the story of Ninjor, one of the very last toys in the line, not featured in any of the entertainment properties except for the little comic book that came with the toy. So, you know, fairly rote and generic ninja. The cool thing about the toy is that instead of normal people hands and feet, he's got like demon hands and feet. And so I sort of replicated that with his gauntlets and his boots. Scareglow. So I leaned into the you can only make a skeleton, not like a skeleton man, with Scareglow. And Scareglow, his toy is he is a glow-in-the-dark skeleton, and he has a long purple cape. So we did that. Now, why did I make his scythe invisible? That must have been a mistake, because he is known for having his scythe. Let's fix that. There we go. I don't know. I don't like that one. That's too normal. There we go. I'll give it its colors later. You know, the way the mods work is if you use a certain weapon, you know, like, what's that called? The calf seal. So if you mod the calf seal to be invisible, then it'll be invisible for every character who uses it. So that was probably what happened there, is that I modded it for one character, not realizing it would happen to Scareglow. Alright, so I've got a lot of the Princess of Power characters here. Flutterina, who is the butterfly woman. I really like, you know, at the time, I was, you know, 5 years old when it came out, so I didn't like She-Ra because, you know, why is this girl replacing He-Man? You know, I want to watch He-Man, not He-Man's sister. But, you know, I've kind of grown to really appreciate a lot of the Princess of Power characters. Even though you look at them, they're pretty, they're all pretty much, you know, pretty rote themselves. You know, there's not a lot of difference between them. Their looks, I mean, so you can get a little more creative here. Like, she's got elf ears, you can hardly see them. Maybe I should have gone with antennas, but that's what I did. Huntara, if I remember her story, she was a villain who later turned good, so you can do whatever you want with her, and her figure comes with sort of these twin-looking lightsabers, so I modded an actual lightsaber into the game. And so the figure looks a lot like Grace Jones, as does the animated character. It looks like Grace Jones. Unfortunately, I couldn't really pull that off, but she's got a white mohawk with a tail, so I was able to do a tail without a mohawk. And her upper body costume is very similar to what the animation model looks like, so pulled that off fairly well. And then I think, like I don't lean into the cheesecake. Oh no, never mind. All right, sorry, I did that. I thought that I was able to say like when the lower armor breaks, it looks like the original figure, but it doesn't. And so I probably have it so you can't break view equipment. Yeah, I disabled it. Or that's not how you do it. You do it on this screen. Default break, do not break. Okay. Sorry, I'm not going through and showing every single one. It's just that it will take forever, and like I didn't lean into the titillation aspect of knocking the armor off of female characters. Just not into that sort of thing. Frosta, sort of an ice princess. This is her character, and I think she looks neat. She's got snowflakes on her costume. Glimmer was hard to do because Glimmer doesn't have a whole lot of character in her design. So I just used her characters and kind of tried to fancy it up a bit. And I don't know, I'm not super proud of this one. She's got like this crown thingy. That's as good as I could do. Maybe I should go back and add textures to her costume pieces. Queen Angela, I really went hard on the textures thing. She's got this Japanese, what is this art style called? This isn't sumie, is it? It's something else. But with that kind of look, and the angel wings as her character has, and then this staff. I don't know what's up with the heart animated in the middle, but it had wings on it, so I thought it worked. And so that's her. I think for the armor break feature, I knocked off her coat, and she's got a battle suit under it, kind of a body armor thing. Castaspella is a wizard character, so I kind of made her. I guess I did kind of lean into the titillation a little bit with this character. Just because I wanted to go, the stock character of a sexy librarian. She's a wizard. She has forbidden knowledge, that sort of thing. All right, into the Horde. So here comes Hordak. I like the. I mentioned before I didn't really like She-Ra, so the Horde toys came out as part of the He-Man line, not the She-Ra line of toys, and their backstory was a little different in that they were like ancient warlords who were freed or something, and so I kind of lean into that more with the main Horde guys. So Hordak is more of a ancient death god thing than he is a mechanical snorting pig middle manager, even though that is hilarious. I do love that idea from the cartoon. Grizzlor, again, you can't make a guy furry. You can only do like this scarred lizard type thing, but it works from a distance. It reads. Grizzlor does not have horns and long hair like this, but it's the best way I could do to kind of fancy him up and sell the idea of long fur. Mantenna. Okay, so here's where you got to get really stupid and extra creative if you want to do these characters justice. And I don't know if I did with Mantenna, but his giant ears are a pair of bat wings, and I know they're kind of folded the wrong way, but you can't place each ear. You have to place them as a pair, and so you get things like parts sticking out as you manipulate them as a pair, and so that's as good as I could do. And then I didn't have the ability to do the sticky out eyes, so I just gave him red glowing eyes. Modulok, I just made a fearsome beast instead of a shapeshifter. Gave him this goofball codpiece thing just for some color variation. I think he's the only guy that doesn't have. I didn't kind of recreate the Horde logo on because the toy itself does not have the Horde logo. Oh yeah, this version of Soul Edge that's all teeth and eyeballs, because that fits with the body horror idea of Modula. It's kind of the direction I leaned into. Leech. Leech shows off that Horde logo better probably than every character because it's front and center. And I put it on an apron because, you know, his power is that he consumes life force, right? So what if he just eats people? And he's a butcher, so he's got an apron on. And then I used turtle shells to replicate the suction cups on his hands. Which looks alright. Shadow Weaver. Evil Wizard Lady with this spooky scythe. Same posing as Scareglow, so not a whole ton to look at that's original here. You know, it's hard to find costumes that'll cover someone head to toe because, like I said, SoulCalibur, kind of part of its stock and trade is sexy ladies, and so it's tough to create somebody who's not meant to be that sometimes. So here is Katra. She's a cat lady, and she will use her claws to scratch you, and so maybe she, you know, tears her own clothing or something. So she's got another one of those swords that was a parasol or an umbrella, but is now just a katana because I modded the game. I like the glasses that I gave her. I think they look pretty cool. I think and she's got cat ears because why not? Instead of just doing the cat mask thing. So I think the cat eye glasses and the cat ears are pretty neat kind of reimagination of what Katra is supposed to be. So Octavia is a green octopus woman, and I was able to replicate that fairly well here with these costume bits that are just, you know, I don't know what they're meant to be. I think they're just part of just kind of fantasy stuff, but you know, they work for tentacles. The figure or the character in the show does not wear pink, but I thought it was a good contrast with the gold and green. And I thought it looked pretty cool in the face. So she's got sort of fins on her head because the character does. And she has no hair, but I wanted to give her hair. You know, I haven't really called any attention to these portraits, but the game lets you do this. You pose them and get the camera in where you want and snap a picture with any other stock poses. Oops, I pressed the wrong button. And I'm not going to edit because that's effort. As we load back in here, alright, we've got Scorpia. So there's a weapon that is claws on their hands, and then there's a weapon that is a sword that breaks down into a whip, and so I went with the whip for the scorpion tail instead of claws for scorpion claws, even though the character has scorpion claws. So I mean she's sort of dominatrix-y, but the military dominatrix kind of deal here, red skin to sell the scorpion thing. So you know, I guess I did go into some weird directions with some of the characters, but only when I thought it served the character. Like I'm some great creator here. Like I'm creating literature with these things. I think you know what I mean. And Trapta is a character defined by the fact that she has prehensile hair to wrap up her foes, and you know, really can do nothing like that in the game. So I gave her a mean face and found, you know, hair that kind of does look like the hair she's got, but you can't do like streaks of color in the hair unless the hair was made for that. So so this is where she kind of lies. And I see a Horde logo peeking out. Did I do a thing where you see a Horde logo when you break her armor? Yeah. Because her figure that came out, all she has is a very tiny Hordak head on her belt. Otherwise you wouldn't tell that she's a Horde character. Mosquitor, another very very creative license here. Like could not do the eyeballs. The character has these awesome eyeballs bulging out of his head. But I did this again with wings, bat wings. I applied like a lizard texture to them. He's got this helmet. I think it's a boxing headset helmet that I gave the same texture to, and then this other piece for the long nose. And then this heart is a mod. It's from an iteration of Astaroth from a past game that modders added back in because the toy has that blood pumping feature on his chest, right? So he sort of needs that. And gave him the purple triangles on his tops of his boots like the figure has. So I think he looks pretty neat. Kind of a plague doctor kind of thing, like take the mosquito head and turn it into a plague doctor situation, and it worked out. General Sundar is a one and done character from the cartoon. They did do a toy of him in the classics line, and I just wanted to have a knight, and I wanted to have a lot of horde characters because they're my favorite, just because they are that kind of. In the goofy world of Masters, they are also goofy, but they're also kind of the most monsterish looking. So I made this guy kind of a ghost or a monster with his flaming red eyes. He was a villain in the show. He turned good in his episode, but this is obviously the evil version. Horde Prime. So a lot of creative license on Horde Prime. I sort of made him look like a battle priest. Instead of a giant robot or whatever he is actually supposed to be. So I made a custom figure. I make custom figures for classics, and this is sort of what I did with that too. I made him a priest with this tall mitre looking hat, and on his he's got the horde symbol. Imp. Joke character. There are satyr legs in the game, and the little guy in the cartoon has hooves. So this is what I did with Imp. So I made him look like this. I kind of went in a pan sort of direction. Gave him a very young look, and made him very goofy in terms of fighting style. Calyx is a rock monster who shows up in one episode of the 2002 cartoon, and he exists only for a moment where he questions Hordak, and Hordak kills him. So to show that, Hordak's not Skeletor, he'll actually kill a fool. So you gave him a costume that's like sandstone colored, and textured his skin to look like rock. I think it's neat. Rat Trap is a dumb name for a cool concept in that he is a mummy, and really no good way to make it. You can make a mummy, but it's just a stock mummy, no exposed, rotting skin or tattered bandages. It's like perfect. It's like a costume store mummy. So I kind of went with torn linen costume here with Nightmare's arm to sort of sell the idea of that. He doesn't look like a mummy at all. He's just wearing a turban. So Double Trouble is, I think she's actually a heroic character. But the way that the character works is she's got a swivel head like many faces, and she's got a happy face and a mean face. So I talked about this with Evil Lynn. So the character of Tira has a gameplay mechanic where she can be happy or she can be sad. And so that fits the character of Double Trouble. She doesn't wear a Horde emblem because she isn't actually Horde. I don't think. I don't know a whole ton about this character. Voltac is an evil vulture guy. So I gave him a pointy nose, instead of a beak, I guess. And just a knight with bird wings. Nothing really fancy here. I guess I just wanted quantity over quality with the Horde. Icer came out pretty neat. In that there's like this crystal armor from a past SoulCalibur game that has been modded in here. And I kind of made a Pepsi Man looking stock body. I could not replicate his parka hood with the assets in the game, so he just looks like this. And then he's got this crystalline sword here. Looks like it's made of ice. Yeah. MOTU is an Egyptian-themed character. I don't know if I really replicated that here, but I'm pretty happy with the texture manipulation I was able to do. I think it was a nice looking result here. So his deal is that in his episode he steals, or he kind of turns the sorceress into crystal in her Zoar form. And so I gave him wings just to fancy him up a bit and to kind of bring that aspect in here that, while he didn't take the sorceress's or Zoar's wings, that was part of his storyline. Is it cool? Is it dumb? I don't know. So this is Tuvar, the blue half of Too Bad. In the episode where Tuvar and Badra are merged into Too Bad, they have Tuvar as sort of a character that will use modern or space-age weaponry and tools to achieve. They're both bounty hunters and they compete with each other. And Badra is more savage, whereas Tuvar is more sciencey. Not really able to do a sci-fi themed thing here, so I just gave him, gold and that one of his swords is actually a pistol. So I think it sort of plays into that a bit. Whereas Badra, I made more, kind of bestial, obviously, because he is. I mean, that's his face. I mean, pretty good replication of Badra's face. He doesn't have that vertical crest there. I added that because I wanted to, because you can't really see the horizontal one in battle as the game is flying around. I guess he's not as bestial as I really thought. I mean, he's wearing matching armor and he looks put together. Perhaps he's a civilized beast. All right, Roboto. Really went for it here. This whole body is just a mod. It's like, I think this was Astaroth was a robot in one of the games, and this is just that body imported into this version of SoulCalibur. But I gave him his heart and colored him somewhat appropriately. I couldn't color the arms and legs differently, so the best I could do was blue armor on the arms and red armor on his boots. He has no hooks or anything, or his axes, but he has a little flying robot buddy because he uses the fighting style of 2B, which I don't really know, but it's from the game Nier. And oh, where'd he go? Oh, there he is. Obviously, I'm not very, very knowledgeable in that universe. But yeah, you see, it's a kind of a female animation style, but I don't know. I think it works fine. Goat Man. I didn't get a lot of the cartoon as a kid. I had the little golden books. I think that was some were super golden books, some were little golden books, and in one of them, Beast Man has a lackey named Goat Man, and I loved Goat Man just because he shows up for like 2 pages of it. Fisto knocks him into next Thursday, and that's it for Goat Man. But Yeah, he's just sort of a highwayman is the kind of costume here. Then he uses Beastman's thing to show his sort of allegiance with Beastman. Pig Boy. Pig Boy is a background character that is never addressed. He's never spoken to. He has no dialogue, but he's in the Masters of the Universe movie with Dolph Lundgren and Frank Langella. And he was a little kid who won a contest for a walk-on role. But the walk-on role was basically an extra standing behind Skeletor holding his staff. He would hand his staff off to Pig Boy. And then Pig Boy had a great appearance in the Revelation cartoon, where it was, say what you will about it, like it, dislike it. There were a lot of parts I did like, a lot of parts I really did not like. But my favorite part of it was Goatman and Pig Boy showed up together, and the character Andra was like, they sent Pigman and Goatman and Pig Boy. I really liked that moment, and I wish Pig Boy would get an official release somehow in the future. Pig Head from Sunman doesn't really cut it. And I did all this before Sunman was imported into Masters, so I should really try that out. Now this is a character where, one of the more feminine animated fighting styles just didn't work for the character, and I wanted to use the whip sword, but I went with the nunchucks, because I guess that's sort of the closest thing, because that character the whip sword character is very much dominatrixy, and seeing that sort of animation from this big lizard man, it would be funny, but it would be a little odd. And you'll see where I use some of those things at another time here. So I'm not using the same fighting styles over and over and over again. Clawful. I just wanted Clawful. This guy really has nothing to do with Clawful, if I'm honest. He's got a helmet that is kind of aquatic looking, kind of a King of the Seas thing, but Merman is King of the Seas. But this actually is one of those female fighting styles, but I didn't care. I wanted to use it for Clawful. Who's next? Lodar. Lodar was a character from the mini-comics. He was the ruler of Slave City who had abducted He-Man and forced him to fight in an arena. And he gets his powers from the sun. Alright, I pushed the wrong button somehow and something funny happened, so the recording got cut and I'll edit them together. But that was Lodar. Just sort of a one-shot comic book villain who didn't accomplish much. Count Marzo is a very interesting character. He is a old wizard who looks ancient until he gets his amulet, which I kind of try to replicate in his string of pearls here with a texture on it. And then he turns into a younger looking warlord, sort of a Rasputin type. He was one of the rare characters who was a non-toy character who showed up in the 80s cartoon as well as in the 2000s cartoon. And he shouldn't have been able to, I think, because characters created for the 80s cartoon are the property of the production company, not of Mattel. But they were able to sneak Marzo into the cartoon somehow. He's a pretty cool character. Like, he's the only villain who has his own transformation sequence, a la He-Man. In the 2000s cartoon, when he gets his amulet, he transforms from his little old man form to this form, and it's a very cool animation. What am I doing here? I'm pressing A when I mean to press B. Here we have Prince Daikon. Prince Daikon was from a mini-comic called The Secret Water of Life, or The Secret Liquid of Life. I gave him the same fighting style as Clamchamp. I should not have done that. But as a prince, he's got a crown on, and he wears purple in his appearance. I feel like I haven't finished this guy because I don't think I should have left that this wrap without some sort of design or texture on it. I might have just cloned Clamchamp to get started on him, because making a dark skin tone is actually difficult in this engine. King Hiss, so the Snake Men. I got weird with the Snake Men. So King Hiss here. Now unfortunately there is no snake body, so I could not knock off his armor to reveal a mass of writhing snakes. But I gave him these tentacle things, same ones that I gave to Octavia, with a snake texture on them. And the spears look like snake heads. So what happens when you do? It just looks like lizardy guy with Voldo's moveset. So, very weird looking. Lots of erratic movements. Something that I think would happen if you were a snake guy. You'd probably move like that. Do these sorts of wacky things. Cobra Khan. And Cobra Khan was not originally a snake man, but he is a snake man, so I put him with the snake men. And so I used a lot of the move sets that wouldn't work for, say, Ram Man or Fisto or Hordak, and I used them on the snake men because you don't know these snake men. They could be female snakes, or they could just be graceful. I'm not trying to be all I'm not trying to be any way talking about this. It's just that some animations just don't suit some characters, but they're actually really cool, and I want them represented, and there aren't a whole ton of female characters in Masters of the Universe, so I wanted some way to use all these movesets. And so I went in a direction with the Snake Men. Now you can't do very much with the snake bodies. You can't give them a lot of armor. In fact, I think I had to use mods to even give anybody these armors, or give any of these armors to the Lizard Man body. But it works out, I think. So yeah, this is one where Tongue Lasher, his toy, comes with a green dragonfly crossbow thing, and then he also has a long tongue. So that these wings make sense, and then the whip sword makes sense for him as a way to kind of replicate even his slicking back hair he doesn't have. That's fine. He is a flamboyant, interesting fellow. I really don't like what the She-Ra cartoon did with Tongue Lasher, how just goofy he looks. See if any of his poses are any of his like dominatrix-y things, like the character Ivy that uses this moveset is very clearly a dominatrix type of character. But yeah, there's really nothing to show that here. It's funny when a giant lizard person kind of does that thing to you when you're in battle. Fangor is a more latter-day character, and really no different from any of the other characters, snake folks. Why does this look like this? Did I do that on purpose? That looks weird. Sorry, note to self there, that looks odd. This should be Snakeface. He's the other, and the wrong button here. He's the other core 5 snake person, but I can't really replicate that. He's a monstery-looking guy who looks at you and turns you to stone. So I just went with another sort of generic snake person, and Fangor is the closest thing to it. Mylena is a character from the cartoon, and she actually does look like this in the cartoon. So they kind of went a little risque with the character, with a tiny little skirt and bikini top, but just needed another warrior woman, and she fit the bill. Extendar is a dumb character. He's just Mechanex's gimmick done a different way by extending his arms and legs as well as his neck. But you know, it's good to have another knight character, I guess. There really aren't very many knights in Masters. You got Extendar and you got General Sundar for the Horde. And the toy has this thing that comes off his chest to cover his face, and so that's why I did that there. It might look a little odd, but I like it. Lord Mask is the Herald of Shikoti who comes next. This guy looks like, you know, final boss from a Final Fantasy game, so I like how he came out. The actual character isn't quite as vertical in his mask, but he's got a mask that has fangs and spikes all over it, and so I did the thing here, and I think he looks sweet. Here's Shikoti. She's an evil witch who was imprisoned or bound to a pyramid in the desert, and she was freed, and then she was defeated by a little boy. So, not my favorite use of characters, but it was the best episode of the original cartoon. The House of Shikoti. It's a 2-part episode, so it's 40 minutes long. It's on YouTube. Go watch it. It's the best episode of the Masters series, except, you know, it's kind of scary in some ways. You know, scary for a 6-year-old. So then they did dumb shit like heavily feature Ram Man in really bad comedy, and like I mentioned before, had a little boy save the day in the end. General Tataran is the leader of the goblins, and he doesn't have a heart. So Skeletor put a shape-shifting spell on him to make him look like a regular man, and hit him in some rubble after a battle with He-Man, and to fool He-Man into thinking that he accidentally killed a man. And He-Man retires for about 3.5 minutes before he comes back and saves the day. The Problem with Power is the name of that episode, and that's another really good one. It functions sort of as a finale for the series, even though it was not meant to be. But if you watch it with that in mind, like this is the finale of He-Man, it works. King Miro, the father of King Randor. I went totally in the 2000X direction here. Maybe I did a little too much green. It should be turquoise anyway. But yeah, so King Miro was, in the Filmation 80s series, he was lost on the Isle of Tears, I think, which they later expanded to be that's where he met Keldor's mother and fathered Keldor, who later becomes Skeletor. In this case here, he's just, in the 2000X, he was just a captain. There wasn't a king until Randor, so there was Captain Miro and then Captain Randor, and the elder, the Council of Elders, appointed Randor king. And we never saw Miro again except for one little flashback. Perfuma is a She-Ra character. She's not with the rest of the She-Ra characters. You know, once you get into a certain number of characters, it becomes hard to rearrange. So Perfuma is sort of like, you know, kind of thought of her as a wood nymph sort of thing, forest nymph, flower themed. You know, it's sort of fortuitous that there's a version of the whip sword in the game that is a flower with thorns, a rose. You know, another aspect I could have gone was to give her Amy's style, because Amy, like roses appear on the screen when Amy does her flashy special moves. Hawk is either, well, there's also Delora, and they use the same character model, but Hawk is either Stratos' wife or his sister. And I think they kind of retconned it where Hawk is his sister and Delora is his wife. So she's a sort of Stratos-y, but also sort of not. I just wanted to use the dual Tonfa fighting style for another character, and so I struggled to find a character to use it. I thought Hawk would be a good one because the fighting style incorporates like tornadoes and wind bursts and things like that. And then her hair looks like wings. Clever. I think she's got a bird on this thing, right? Stand still. It's like a griffin. I guess that works. Sorry, I didn't mean to zoom in like that. Andra. Andra is a character who showed up in a couple of panels of the Sunday morning comic that only ran in 3 newspapers in the United States, so nobody was ever introduced to this character, but obviously it was a grievous insult that they changed her for the Revelation show. Actually, no, I don't think she was in the Saturday morning, or the Sunday morning comic strip newspaper thing. I think she was in the Star Comics, which, you know, was also not very well read because it was canceled in a year, but hey. Everything is somebody's entire childhood experience, I suppose. So in Revelation, she is sort of a bounty hunter. She uses high tech to scavenge in a post-magic world. Couldn't really replicate that at all. So I just made her a skilled hand-to-hand fighter in sort of like a kung fu vein. Blade from the movie. He doesn't have that mohawk. I just thought it looked cool. I thought that it worked for this character. He does have an eye patch. I wasn't able to do the metal jaw thing. I think that this character was done in the movie because they couldn't do Trap Jaw and they couldn't do Triclops, so they sort of combined them into one character, and that was Blade. Did Blade have a metal jaw? I might be totally misremembering that. He had like a thing on his chin. Alright, getting close to the end here. So, Nathan. I must have started a character and not done anything with it. I have no idea who this is supposed to be. So I don't know what I was thinking when I made this guy. I don't even think I made much. You know, did much work on it. This might just be a random. Okay, Nathan. Alright, the He-Man of the past. King Grayskull. I don't like the idea of King Grayskull. He's just He-Man, but bigger in the past, and exists to show that Hordak kills fools. But I gave him an attempt at creating the snake armor that He-Man wears at the end of the 2002 series. So that's what this look is. That's why he doesn't look exactly like He-Man, but with longer hair. He's meant to be in snake armor. And then Revelation introduced a new take on King He-Man here. I call this guy King Divan because Divan Grayskull is the character's name, so I just split it in two. You know, there's King Grayskull and there's King Divan. And I really like how I was able to do the symbol on his chest. Just sort of proud of it. Because it's hard, you know, to do He-Man's costume. It's really difficult to do a chest emblem like that, and so this is several of parts. You can kind of see the seam from here, like there's just a cylinder embedded in his chest, and then a halo around the cylinder with the texture on the back of the cylinder. And it kind of works better than what I actually did with He-Man. Did I get too stereotypical with this costume? I really didn't mean to. I just thought that it would look really cool. Because he's ancient, you know, he's the most ancient of all the He-Men of the past. Wundar, the infamous brown-haired He-Man that nobody knows how they got, but seemingly a lot of people had him. So really that's all I did, was I made him a brown-haired He-Man. He didn't have armor. The toy didn't. He came with as just kind of naked He-Man. But I like this on him. I was able to color it such that I think it really works. Vicor, the Viking He-Man of the North. I am not too thrilled with how this came out. I stuck a book on his chest. And again, Vicor doesn't have chest armor. He's got a cape, a fur cape. But he does have chains, or he has gauntlets that have loops for chains, so he must have broken out of prison at some point. He just wrapped his gauntlets in chains. I should probably just remove that chest armor because the character doesn't have any. But I made a character who does. Yeah, he uses the 2000X chest armor. And we have Hero. I think this is a pretty good hero. With the golden armor and golden boots. I kind of give him Elvis hair because what I really liked about Hero in the Revelation show is that he's a total himbo and really made me laugh. So I kind of went in that direction with his looks here. Or did I make this before Revelation came out and I'm lying to tell a cool story? We'll never know. I don't even remember, quite frankly. And that's it. That's the rest of the characters. So going back to He-Man here, just to show him off again, because I think this was very successful. I changed his hair. He didn't originally have that hair. That hair is even a mod, I think, and it's for Hildy, I think. So I modded it so it could go on a male character, but I think that works for He-Man. Maybe it works better for Prince Adam. Did I put it on Prince Adam? No, I didn't. I left him with sort of a stock hairdo. All right, maybe I should change that. But anyway, this was my SoulCalibur MOTU fighting game idea here, and I hope this wasn't the most boring thing in the world. It probably was. An hour talking about game characters. Who cares? Probably nobody. But anyway, I'm glad you made it this far.